वेलकम एवरीबॉडी। धन्यवाद आने का। पोस्ट लंच सेशंस नींद वाले होते हैं, लेकिन हम आपको लोरी नहीं सुनाने वाले। मेरे साथ रॉक स्टार्स हैं और वील प्रोबेबली डू अ लिटिल रॉक शो हियर। वैसे जस्ट फॉर कॉन्टेक्स्ट, दिस इज द थर्ड टाइम आई एम कमिंग टू हिंदू कॉलेज। फर्स्ट टाइम, द थर्ड टाइम इज दिस। द सेकेंड टाइम वॉज द लास्ट टाइम इट हैपेंड, एंड द फर्स्ट टाइम आई वॉज हियर in an actual rock show. We used to have a rock band. KK was our lead singer, and we used to win first prizes. यहाँ भी हमने first prizes जीते थे. So, thank you very much. एक sense of studentship होती है, वो वैसी ही है, मगर ऐसा लग रहा है you guys are smarter than what we were, and I hope this discussion proves it to you, how we move forward. सवाल होंगे at the end, please आगे आ जाना. The session holds great promise for all of you. Technology and gender. I think I'll begin with you. Basically, gender and technology. We talk about it in various shapes and sizes. It's almost as if the pre-technology age of gender discrimination has now moved into the technology age, where again we are seeing a discrimination, or maybe it has opened far more doors, but that the lagging of women in technology continues. What are your views on that?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you to both Hindu College and ORF for organizing this wonderful conclave. I think we've come a long way, even when we think about technology, right? Like from the days of like owning a phone, a basic phone, or being able to put in an application online and hear back after a little while, to really now today where everything we do has a technology footprint. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to be able to ensure that women are a very equal part of this journey. And that's true. Look at India. Look at how, whether we talk about, how do we get bank accounts to open up? How do we get, how do we ensure that cash transfer programs happen? Women are really the key beneficiaries of so many of the government's own programs, and it's been made possible so much so because of technology, because of digital public goods, and I know that we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I think there's also this sort of challenge that we see where there is an underrepresentation of women when we think about who is designing, who is regulating, who is creating technology products. And that is, I think, the big challenge today, because when you're not involved in the process of design and creation, then you're actually leaving out those who, you're not necessarily thinking about the use case or the user journey of those people. So I think that's where I see the big challenge, and that's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, are we actually making inequalities stronger? Are women actually getting left out even more out of development processes, leadership opportunities? And it's not just women. I think there's also this challenge when we think about vulnerable communities. So, just beyond thinking about gender, there is this sort of opportunity or a challenge where we're not necessarily at this point today thinking about who all need to be part of the ideation, creation, regulation journey. Just because we all love our data points, I'll just say a few data points which refer to India, but I think it's true of most countries in the world. Definitely true of all low middle income countries, of the G20 countries, where women are, there is this big gender digital divide. In India, only 42% of women have ever used the internet compared to 62% of men. When we think about who owns mobile phones, 32% of women in India own a mobile phone compared to 60% of men. And over this past decade, that gap has actually widened. So while in the beginning, it was a smaller difference between men and women, and I think that's to be expected because even men didn't own mobile phones 2 decades ago. But that gap is really widening. And I think, interestingly, if we think about even the private sector, and we think about where is it that women have job opportunities, if you look at the IT sector, what we see is that at the time of recruitment, there is almost parity, gender parity at the time of recruitment. But as you grow in your careers, there is a big gap that comes about in leadership positions. And I think that really just shines a light on the fact that this is not just a developing country problem. This is not just a lower middle income country problem. There is a problem in which we are thinking about systems. There is an issue in which we are thinking about the journeys of women. And that's really the sort of thing that I think really at the Gates Foundation, we are thinking about these questions and saying, how can we work with governments? How can we work with private sector? How can we ensure representation of marginalized groups, vulnerable groups, women in these journeys? Maybe I'll pause there.
Yeah, but before you shut the mic, I'll just put a question. So now in 2019, 2020, we began this work from home, and that has gained currency to the extent that people now don't want to go to office. Okay, so wouldn't that have empowered women far more? Since you track this so closely, what has been your experience in this short term, past 2-3 years, of the ability for professionals, particularly in technology and services, to be able to deliver it from home?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great question. It really talks about, in a sense, what's the future of work? Is that future of work one that is going to be driven by technology change? I think that's a no-brainer. The answer is very much yes. But I think the experience has really been of a double burden or a triple burden that came about during the pandemic. In many ways, and many of you would already know this, there is an unpaid work burden that women
So
face.
wouldn't that take us back to the pre-technology? There is no change, ceteris paribus. Pre-technology, women had the burden of home and office. First, they had a burden of home, then home and office. Technology was supposed to liberate them, but now you are telling us it has not. And even in the modern, with all the technological tools at disposal to us, women are continuing to have the same burden as the pre-technology age. So what has technology delivered?
And I think that's really the question, right? Why is technology not delivering on a better life for women? That's really the question in front of. In many ways, it is. In many ways, women have access to bank accounts. Right? That's largely because of technology. Women have access to more cash. But there are other challenges, and there's this really interesting example of how refrigerators and washing machines actually were developed around the same time and came into the market at the same time. But the market, the way refrigerators actually became staple in all households versus washing machines didn't have this same sort of presence in households. Why? It's because it is a woman's job in many households to
so which is really a societal issue outside technology. I'm going to come to you, Aakash. One of the ways where technology has delivered ease is the ability to shop without going outside. And I think after the Amazons and all the other shopping, the fruits and the Zomato, etc., the next level, I want you to talk about the underlying, which is that like the UPI has done for payments, ONDC is doing for not really shopping, maybe let us say the marketplace, it's redefining marketplace. Now, all that is good. How is it different from, let us say, what the US or Europe or China model? How is the Indian model different?
So thank you very much for inviting me. And I know it's a post-lunch session, so I'll make sure it's very interesting and a lot of numbers. And I've been teaching at Hindu, so I know students are interested in storytelling and that kind of work. So good question. And I think, let me just have some numbers for you guys. So how many of you have shopped on Amazon and Flipkart? Most.
All men and women. Good.
So after doing that, so how India shops. India has 180 million to 190 million e-shoppers. You have all shopped at Flipkarts and Amazons. That comes around $50 billion, the GMV. That is, in Indian terms, 4.3 lakh crores. All of you use UPI? You know UPI? Now, let me tell you an interesting number. In 2022, peer-to-merchant payments, so Sudama Chai, Shawarma Wala, I think the Vaishno Chaat Wala, you must have paid through your Paytms, the Google Pays. The peer-to-merchant payments in India is 27 lakh crores. That is $300 billion in 1 year. And our e-shopping experience is $50 billion. And unique UPI users, 260 million. And these firms, Amazons, the Flipkart, they could just penetrate at just this minuscule level. And your UPI, which is like Indian model, could penetrate to this kind of 27 lakh crore, 2 lakh crore per month kind of transaction value. But interestingly, you might see, you will not see that Chachawala becoming the Amazon, the Flipkart. You might see the other way around, that sometime, maybe 3 years, 5 years later, Swiggy turns itself into a kind of a chole bhatura kind of vendor. So how do you stop that? According to Finance Committee, a standing committee on finance, only 40% of MSMEs get formal credit. So what did Indian government do, which is an Indian model? You have ONDC. What is ONDC? ONDC is like, we will provide you all the tools. So right now, Chachawala, the Shawarma Wala are not discoverable. You might know them in Kamanagar, but let's say a person in South Delhi does not know what Chachawala is. Maybe if you are from Delhi University. But if we provide them those tools of discovery, of cataloging, of grievance redressal, of returns, you can do wonders, which we did in UPI, 27 lakh crore, just imagine. It is just 26 crore people, unique users using it. And you have 150 million, 15 crore people withdrawing money through Aadhaar-enabled payment systems. So that kind of, let's say, innovation is totally Indian model because it is bottom up. You're working for that neighborhood stores. Remember, India has 12 million Kirana stores, 42.5 million MSMEs. And these are the biggest employment generation comes from that. So you have to include them in this digital world. So what you do? We have this thing called account aggregator. Right now, ONDC will solve one problem. You will have some sort of discoverability. But how will you ensure these people get credit? Because as per the standing committee, they don't get credit. So you come up with open credit enablement network. It's a kind of credit layer. To do that, we have a technical intervention called account aggregator, where you will provide data sharing tool. Right now, let's say Chachawala has account on Swiggy and Zomato. What if I can share that data with bank bureaus, with fintechs, with NBFCs? But there was no system to do that. They could not get formal credit. But with account aggregator, we have provided consent layer. What you can do as a Chachawala, as a local vendor, you can ask that all my financial information can be shared with the lending partner. And you can get credit in a matter of minutes. How many of you guys have used Paytms or Cred? You can get easy credit, credit cash, in a matter of minute. Just imagine 15 years, 10 years before, you could not get credit like that. And you know why we could do that? Because through Aadhaar, we had the cost of customer acquisition going down from $12, that is $1,000, to 6 cents. That is nothing, less than 10 rupees. And it used to take a week to get KYC done. Right now, you can get it in a minute. Just imagine in 2012, 2013, it used to take you 2 days to get a mobile connection. Right now, in a minute, and thanks to Jio also, you can have great kind of internet from 15 kind of MB to 15 GB per month. That kind of expansion. So that is the Indian model. You ensure you look at your own realities.
So pardon me for interrupting. So how is it different from the US or the Chinese or the EU model?
So simple example. Do you think in India, UPI dominates 75% of the payment transactions? What do you think would happen in US? Any guesses? All payment systems are either done by Paytms or the Apples, the MasterCards, the kind of, you can say, American Express. one of the major reasons for low adoption of digital payments in India was merchant discounting rate, which this MasterCards, the 2%, the 3%. Whenever you used to go to, let's say, big posh mall, they would not accept American Express. वो बोलेंगे यार 4% लेता है, मैं तो नहीं लूँगा, तो cash दे दे. That happened because you were not catering to the Indian psyche. That we were cash dominated because we don't want to pay that 4%. So you come up with our own solutions. But in US, you cannot. In that kind of private sector will lead that conversation. You will have big tech, Apple, the Microsoft, the Adobe. In India, you will have totally indigenous startups doing it. So that's an Indian model. Or let's say in Chinese model, you will have totally public sector thing. You will have no privacy. You will have total domination by your data. How many of you use TikTok? Most of you now it's banned.
It's banned by
PUBG.
It's banned.
Your data was not your own. So you had a surveillance system in your pockets. The government could own everything. So in India, you have bottom-up kind of innovation, privacy by design. You have, let's say, foundational rails are owned by public-private partnership, but startups can rule. Upstocks, Zerodha, could not exist without Aadhaar and eKYC. But they are public sector, let's say private startup entrepreneurs, but the underlying technology is ours.
So could you say that the Indian technology model is to build the infrastructure and let private entities come onto it rather than private entities driving the whole show? For instance, in the US, Amazon, or in China, Jack Ma's Alibaba, yeah. So would that be a policy difference and a difference in approach?
Yes, that's what we are doing. You can see in other things, in ONDCs, that component, the foundation architecture is owned by Indian banks, RBI, the top kind of private companies, public-private partnership, so that no one player dominates. Remember, Flipkart and Amazon can charge 25% because they own the market. They own the marketplace. Right now, the community owns it. So they cannot charge 25%.
So when is this going to get launched?
ONDC is right now. So right now, if you go to your Paytms, Meesho, My Store, you can use ONDC. You can buy groceries from that place. So it's already in pilot places in Bangalore and Delhi. I think by the end of year, we have that in 9 to 10.
So you think it's going to be as successful as UPI?
The minds who made UPI, the Aadhaar, they are behind it. I hope they have a great track record of success.
Great. So. Great. Please get your questions ready. I'm going to open it out very soon, but I have one very important issue regarding technology and the gender. And I think all the young men here must know this, and the women need to be sensitized about it. $30 billion is going into the making of sex robots in Japan. This is a follow-up of what is happening in Alexa, Siri, where women are being shown there is a submissiveness, there's an underlying tenor of submissiveness. Alexa, do this. Siri, do that. And the Alexa and Siri, with those female voices, go and do it for you. In the sex robot industries, you may not even need, the robot is expected to, this is a Guardian story, that when you come, if you like Mozart, honey, I've got Mozart for you, or if you like rock music, rock. The entire edifice of these sex robots is being built upon preferences of males. In other words, going forward, what you are competing in AI or in technology is no longer the mind space, but the body space. You are competing for biology. The entire system, you're going to see this happen over the next 10 years, is going to change. The expectations of a submissive woman and a real woman fighting that submissive culture is going to get real, it's going to get harsher, it's going to get tougher, more brutal. How do you see this play out?
The challenge with AI, the challenge with technology, is that it is replicating what are biases that already exist in society. This is a prime example. And I think as we look to the future, these are the types of things that we need to be mindful of. We know today with ChatGPT, we know that it replicates what are the challenges, what are the biases that it's basically looking at what literature exists, right? And it's taking out something which is based on what its own database is. So I think just in terms of thinking about how are we designing for the future, I think the answers are in front of us, right? Who is your audience? Gender bias actually impacts men and women both. It's not something that impacts only women. If your universe is if you're looking at a universe of men and women, and if you're designing for men and women, then I think you need to have women, men, all genders.
So
as
what is
part
the
of
space
this.
for families tomorrow? If, if men are going to be driving this agenda, be it in music or be it, where is the need for women, biological women, and where is the space for those women? I think we are talking about gender equality in terms of inclusion. Here there is a conscious exclusion happening. Where is that? How do you see the future of family here?
I don't think I'll comment on the future of families.
Okay. Would you like to take that?
So we have been working on, see, the question is mostly about responsible use of AI. You have all these algorithms, so you have patriarchal tendencies which can translate it into the cyber world. So how do you ensure you have responsible principles in design of AI? So that's the early part. So you question that kind of data sets. Where are that data sets coming about? But on the issues that there might be some private consumption, where people have this fantastical tendencies, where they have these kind of robotic kind of sexual tendencies which they ascribed in the cyber world. You can only dictate that much that you will have some sort of principles on which you cannot have that kind of algorithms coming about. You will ensure that in the design processes, you have affirmative gender.
Who will ensure this?
I think democratic world, and we work with a lot of Quad countries, that how do you ensure that these technologies are made keeping in mind these checks and balances, that it should not have that kind of tendencies where it can be exploited in that manner. And I think that that kind of ensuring can only come when the technology and R&D is done by in an inclusive manner. You include a lot of psychologists, you include a lot of feminists, you include a lot of political scientists with technologists, so that they can come up with a holistic way of development of these technologies.
Thank you. We'll take the questions, if any. Any questions? Can you just raise your hands?
So currently we were talking about gender and technology. So throughout the discussion, what I was trying to find out was that there is this kind of invisibility of the other genders. Like when we were discussing about, there was this binary purview that was existing. And the fact that currently we are talking about how women has been excluded over a period of time. There was a time when even men couldn't afford all these things. So that invisibility of other genders, like when can we even see when the other genders are also being taken into the discussion? Like the fact that other genders are not being in the discussion, and like where can we reach to that particular point?
Thank you for that question. I think I'll go back to the original comment, which is that if you want technology to be accessible and can be used by everyone, it needs to be designed by those who, by the community. And your question is a great question, because it's not just about the binary of like men and women. It's really also thinking about those who are excluded. Gender is one exclusion. There are other exclusions as well. So I think talking about what you can do today, there are, the way technology is designed, it's constantly evolving. You can have, networks, communities of practice. There is a way in which you're training AI. Who is actually working to train AI to actually be able to respond to what is required today? I think that's where there is a need to open up, bring in more diverse voices, opinions, perspectives, and communities. So I think it's not just about gender. It's not just about the binary of men and women and having a third gender or not. It's also about, are we thinking about Dalit communities? Are we thinking about tribal communities? Are we thinking about, who, and that's just in India. I would say this is an issue which is global. It's not just an India issue.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harsh Yadav. I'm from first year Political Science Honours from Hindu College. My question is for the global level. How will the US-China tech rivalry impact India and the world? Such as competition between the two can be seen via allegation of tech theft by the US, and the US introduced export control to thwart the efforts by China to build computer chips. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think that's a very important question for the present geopolitics. And I think with the supply shocks of semiconductors, we did see how that kind of competition, that kind of scarcity did play a major shock in Indian kind of economy. You could see, I think you could relate personally. If you have booked a car in last 2 years, you must have seen the waiting times. That directly impacts you and me. Also, if you look at on a very fundamental national security point of view, that if you don't have some sort of control over these supply chains, you will have longer issues of ensuring your economy is not affected. So that kind of rivalry issues do have certain direct impact on India. On the technology kind of, let's say, architecture front, US is leading in the R&D, but China has the manufacturing kind of powerhouse. And for the considerable period, you will have some sort of dependency on both of them. So how are we tackling it? That's a threat perception. We are tackling it by having some sort of PLI scheme. So PLI scheme is, you have production-linked incentives programs, you attract the manufacturers of semiconductors, of technical hardware to come and manufacture in India so that you can have some sort of diversity in supply chains. Also, you try to have Quad partnerships between India, Australia, Japan, and US, so that you can have technical standards where this cannot partake. But I think on a larger role, we do face supply shocks. If there's a, let's say, a kind of US and China competition, India will face certain issues and certain challenges.
But Aakash, just a follow-up question. India needs to make its own technologies, and perhaps technology creation is now a national security issue as well. But so far what we have seen, even China is only has either stolen technologies or applied technologies. India has not stolen, but it has applied. UPI is not an Indian technology. UPI is an Indian application, right? So where is the technology creation happening?
I think that's a good question, and that's also a challenging question for us, because we have been good at software. We have not been good at product management. If you know one organization, Indian Software Product Roundtable, they have a vision of India becoming a product nation. How can you have products from India, not only software technologies, but larger kind of manufacturing?
So is there optimism happening there? Is there hope for Indian,
yes.
made in India technology for the world?
Yes, for sure. I think
Great.
that can happen.
Next question, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, respected panel. It was a fascinating discussion. My question is about a different aspect, that there are a lot of cyber frauds happening in the country today, and many of these cyber frauds are happening in the pretexts of jobs, investment, and other things. And mostly, many of my female colleagues have suffered from that problem. So I would like your comments on that, the cyber frauds. So how should we tackle them, and what are we doing to tackle them?
We cannot understand your cyber faults.
Yes, sir. Happening particularly with women. Frauds, cyber frauds, like money deduction and all that things.
Cybersecurity issues,
Yes,
those.
sir.
Thank you. Please take that question.
I think, so you're correct, that component. We do face, because remember, we have a 1.4 billion people. The size of Indian internet is quite big. So you have a lot of attacks on let's say, specifically to, let's say, women on internet. We do face cyber attacks, but remember, how do we tackle it? That's the interesting question. How do we tackle that kind of incidents? So one component which we are doing from the government point of view is to have PM Diksha. How do you do some sort of digital literacy? So remember, these are new people coming into internet. Can they have, you do kind of a training program, in the sense that how can they use internet in a very fair, civil manner. But also remember, internet is a free space. You cannot have offline controls in the online controls. You will see some sort of misbehavior, or that might happen. So one component is training. The another component is to have strong laws. We already have a data protection law, which is in draft stage, where you do certain kind of checks inbuilt institutionally to ensure that does not happen. And also, eventually, you need to have some sort of, like I think Gautam was saying, that how do you ensure that you have some sort of value training, that people who are online don't do these kind of things. So that's the larger component.
Thank you.
Can I just add one
sorry,
sentence?
yeah.
Just one sentence to that. I think the government's also thinking about, when you think about building standards, and in fact the digital bill that was tabled in Parliament recently actually was the first time that it spoke about he/she, and rather than talking just saying he, right? And there was a lot of media coverage around this. So I think even from the perspective of building standards and having safeguards, from the government's perspective as well, there is a gender lens that is being applied over there.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, as India is growing in technology, but if we see in rural area, they don't have access to technology. That's why they lack of in education and health in other sector also, especially in agriculture. Don't you think there should be a there should be a rural inclusive technology? And there is a digital divide between the rural and urban area. What's your view on this?
Thanks. Yes, there is a rural and urban divide. Let me just say, talk about one initiative from the government's perspective, and you spoke about health, and you spoke about and agriculture. There is a really strong focus from the government to digitally empower women, especially those who are at the front lines of health, for instance. So frontline workers in India have been empowered with digital technologies. If you think about Ashas or ANMs or Anganwadi workers or health and nutrition systems, they are provided with mobile phones, they're provided with tablets, they're provided with training, and there are specific applications which have been developed so that they are able to do their job well, so that they are able to, they have job aids to help them in streamlining the process. But of course, there is a long way to go, and there is much more to be done. Even in the agriculture space, I think there's interesting ways in which technology is being designed, keeping gender in mind. So, as we know, as the way the economy is moving, there is migration. Men move to urban areas, women continue staying in rural areas and actually do a lot of agricultural labor. So yes, there has to be a lot more to be done on agriculture technology, which keeps in mind women workers, women agricultural workers. But I think there are some interesting initiatives which are already happening.
Thank you.
ma'am.
So I'll take those as your closing remarks. Aakash, your closing remarks.
I think that's a good question. And I'll just say, I think you're correct on that component that if you look at the rural households' internet penetration, only 14.9% have it, compared to urban level, let's say, which is 42%. And specifically in rural kind of internet, women don't have that kind of access. But, same thing used to be said about bank accounts. We changed that. In 2014, before let's say mid 2014, 15, you had a lot of lesser women. But right now, if you look at the penetration of bank accounts, you will see an uptake of women owning them. So you could make certain interventions, smart interventions. Same with PDS. Remember in 2012, there's a data by government data that there was 36% leakages used to happen. That has totally been eliminated with DBTs. So you can make certain technical interventions where more women are, including in the larger chain. So yes, there are challenges, and I think we are tackling it by making sure women first kind of development can happen. But on the larger kind of assertion that there needs a kind of more rural focus, more focus on agriculture, that should happen, and women face the brunt of it. I think we are working on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are living in some absolutely exciting times, disruptive times. But this is not the first time that we are facing these times. It happened during the agricultural revolution. It happened when the railroads were being built. It happened when electricity was. It happened during the internet, and now we are in the age of high technology, artificial intelligence, etc. You are part of it. We are all part of it. I think our panel today offered you many opportunities and also examined some of the threats. As you grow, as you move into jobs of tomorrow, make sure you lead them keeping these ideas in mind, because whether you're doing political science or computer science, technology is going to stay with you. Thank you very much. A big hand for the panelists, please.